Number 13. A large set of sample scores yields a mean of 78 and a standard deviation of 12. The distribution is roughly bell-shaped. According to the empirical rule, 99.7% of the scores will fall between what two values? Well, in order to answer this, the first thing that we kind of have to know are the percentages that are related to the empirical rule and the number of standard deviations that are associated with each one. So just as a reminder, if you're within one standard deviation of the mean, then according to the empirical rule, you will see approximately 68% of your data within one standard deviation. Within two standard deviations is approximately 95% of your data, and within three standard deviations, there's approximately 99.7% of your data. So the 99.7 is what we're looking for here. So according to this empirical rule, 99.7% of the scores will fall between the two values that are three standard deviations away from the mean. So in order to figure out what that is, what we can do is one approach is just kind of draw an axis, and on that axis, mark your mean, the value that's one standard deviation above, two standard deviations above, three standard deviations above, and then going below as well. So this one I would mark with the mean. This one I would mark the value that's one standard deviation above the mean. So if the mean is 78, 78 plus 12 gives you 90. So 90 is one standard deviation above the mean. Now, the value that's two standard deviations above the mean would be 112. And the value that's three standard deviations above the mean is 124. Oh, sorry, I just noticed I made an arithmetic error here. Delete that. This isn't 112, it's 102. So that's 102, which means 102 plus 12 more would be 114. Sorry about that. Okay, now go in the other direction, one standard deviation below, so I would take the mean of 78 minus 12, and that's going to give me 66. And then if I go two standard deviations below, that's take 66 minus 12 more, so that's going to be 54. And then three standard deviations below is going to be 42. So the answer here, the values that are, represent 99.7% of the overall data are the ones that are three standard deviations away from the mean. So those values are 42 and 114. Now that's not the only way you could come up with this. There's certainly a much faster way. If you need to find the value that's three standard deviations above the mean, well, just take your mean and add 3 times your standard deviation to that, and that's going to give you the value that's 3 standard deviations above. If you take your mean minus 3 times your standard deviation, that'll give you the lower one.